I started walking across the street. I feel something hit me on my right side. The next thing I know is I'm just underneath the bus and it's like literally dragging me underneath. And I hate that I even have this thought, but there was times where I was like, I wish I didn't make it because it was just so painful. And I was like, how am I going to live every day in this pain? You survived something that you shouldn't have survived. Like, that's a gift in itself. Like, someone was looking out for you that day. Someone was like there with you and you survived for a reason. So now you have to go do everything that you want to do and live your life to be the fullest.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to or back to 80/20. Thank you so much for clicking on this episode. I'm here today recording in Spotify Studios in LA with Neeloo. Neeloo, thank you so much for joining me on this episode.
Hi, I'm so excited.
I'm so pumped to have you here.
I'm very, very excited to be here. And also, we were just talking about how, like, the way we connected, everything aligned how we needed it to be, and it was so perfect.
So perfect.
Because I was saying I don't really check stories that often. I'm trying to be better about just not like scrolling or like,
which is a great habit to have.
Yeah, mindlessly being on social. So I just kind of avoid stories sometimes. But every now and then I'll just like start clicking away. And I saw that you were gonna be in town. It was like we had just followed each other too, and so it just worked out so perfectly. Because I was like, I'm just gonna reach out to her, like.
And I'm so happy that you did, because I feel like most people don't like. I mean, I'm not one to ask to network ever. I'm so introverted, and I just had this thing where I was like, I just need to put the call out. I need to ask people if they're going to be, if they want to connect when I'm in LA. And I'm so happy that you swiped up and you did, because I feel like most people usually don't,
No, I think I want to start doing that when I go to other cities, like just reaching out to people and be like, especially with a podcast, it's such like an easy way to like connect with someone and network with someone and just get a conversation and have that episode to record too and have that. So it's just a good way to do it. So you've inspired me.
Yeah,
I was gonna say you've actually inspired me in a couple ways.
Oh really? Okay, wait.
I'm gonna tell you the other thing. Okay. I don't know if you still do this, but I was listening to one of your episodes where you talked about the time you upload your episode.
Yes.
Which is, it was a angel number.
444.
Okay. And 333 is my angel number. So I was like, should I start doing 333?
Yeah, you should.
Because like, I just thought that was so cute. And I love that you do that.
Oh, okay. Wait, I love that. Yeah, do 333. And then it's kind of fun because, I mean, no one really notices.
Right.
And you only see the time on, I think it's like on Apple Podcasts.
Okay.
Or maybe Spotify does it too, but
like no one notices, but it's just like,
it's just like a little like tiny little
cute.
like micro detail. That's kind of fun.
And then we were talking about the other thing was podcast vlogs.
Let's my gosh.
Back,
okay.
Well, I don't even know if that was ever a thing, but let's bring podcast vlogs.
Let's do podcast vlogs.
Yes.
Yeah. We got coffee before this, which we both decided that we shouldn't have done because we talked a little bit too much. We should have saved it for the podcast.
I know.
But we were both talking about, just like internet careers and everything so far. And I guess maybe for the listeners who don't know, maybe give just like a little bit of background on your podcast journey so far. And then I definitely want to talk about podcast vlogs because I love that idea.
Okay. For those of you guys who don't know me, I'm Neeloo, but I have just been in social media and the creator space probably for the last like 6 years on both like brand side and like the influencer side. But I had started, the first podcast I had was called One Drink In, and I had started it back in 2020 when I was living in Chicago during the pandemic. And it was honestly just as kind of like a COVID quarantine project. We weren't really going out. I had just made a new friend in Chicago and we're like, let's do this podcast together, and kind of created a community around the idea that it's really hard to make new girlfriends in your 20s after college, especially during that time of your life of like quarantine. And so we kind of created that community and built our podcast off of that. Eventually that didn't work out between the two of us. And so we kind of went on our own different paths and journeys. But since I was just always really, really passionate about podcasting and like content creation and just being on that side of things, I started to just kind of transition the podcast into something a little bit more in alignment with where I was going in my life. I'd started it in my mid-20s. And as I'm getting into my late 20s, I was like, okay, don't really align with some of the things that we used to talk about, which was a lot more like hookup culture, dating, sex, partying, things that I just was kind of getting away from as you do when you get older. And so then my new podcast, it's called Order and Chaos. It's all about finding balance, which is why I also loved 80/20 because it's kind of the same, like we just have a lot
same
of
vibe,
yeah,
same vibe.
we're on the same like wavelength. But so kind of similar in that sense of just finding balance in your everyday life and the chaos that there is. Like for me, I'm someone who grew up in chaos, and so I've always found it almost like to be more comfortable when things are a little bit
Okay.
off and crazy. And so I've had to do a lot of work to kind of find the order. And so that's kind of like where the name came from.
I love
But
it.
yeah, so
I was going to ask you about the name too. That's so fun. Okay, so then for podcast vlogs,
okay.
Order and
So,
Chaos.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, because we were talking about how I love the creation of a vlog. Like I love documenting. I've always loved documenting things.
Have you
like,
vlogged much at all? Like,
I'll do TikTok vlogs all day
Okay.
long, but when it comes to YouTube vlogs, I've done some in the past and I love the process, but it's like then it gets to the actual like uploading, and I don't have like a big YouTube channel, so I also feel like that's part of it where I'm like, who's actually going to see this? But then I just tell myself, and if you're someone who has ever wanted to create or post or whatever, but you feel like you don't have an audience or you're like nervous about it, just take that aspect out of it and just think about the fact that you're going to have this to look back on when you're older,
yeah.
and you're if you want to have kids or whatever, like your kids can see it, and like you just have these memories documented. So just think of it as like that, and not getting bogged down on the whole like views and likes and comments and all that stuff. So that was like one thing that I feel like I need to work on. But I was like, a really good transition would be just doing podcast vlogs and putting the vlogs onto the podcast platform and having it live in one place.
Right? Like having, because people are already there. They're
Mhm.
already watching, they're already listening. And Spotify makes it easy. I feel like this is going to feel like a Spotify for podcasters ad.
Spotify.
Shout out
We love
Spotify.
Spotify for
Big time.
podcasters.
No, but it's literally the easiest podcast
Yeah.
platform, and the fact that video is integrated right away.
Mhm.
I had a friend that I started doing video probably 2 months ago, and I had a friend text me and was like, "How did you do this?
Same.
You're playing on my Spotify right now. Why?" I was like,
Yeah.
"Well, it's easy." And then I have friends that are on big, huge networks, and they want to,
can't do video.
and they can't do video on Spotify. They could post it on YouTube, but they can't do video on Spotify because the network owns
Won't.
everything and they distribute like differently.
I had a call with a network, and the one thing that was like that I was turned off by was the fact that their platform that they don't use Spotify for podcasters, whatever they use. I don't remember what it was, but I was like, well, then you can't do videos, right? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, well, I just like love that part of it, even if
I
it's
love it.
not necessarily like it's not fully there yet with everyone on board with it yet. Like I feel like that's the direction it's going to go in.
Absolutely.
So I would rather be like, I'm not going to go back to something that is going to
Why would
take
I
away from the
backpedal?
features that I can use now. So I was like, no.
Yeah. I have a friend who she has a podcast, and she's literally the best. I love her show, and she's on a network, and she basically, because I visited her and I told her all about Spotify for podcasters, and she was like, okay, so I'm gonna call my network, like call them the next day, and was like, like I want to put video on, because she already records, she
Mhm.
posts everything on YouTube, and they told her no,
I had a friend the same thing.
because she was like, I just see where this is going and I want to be part of it.
Podcast vlogs.
Podcast
We're
vlogs.
gonna make it a thing.
Yeah.
Shout out. We'll give credit where credit is due. Alex Cooper.
Alex Cooper. Yeah.
Queen of podcasts. That's definitely where the
Yeah.
inspo came from. But
Or like her little, what did she do? Like Italy?
she did Italy. She did like I think Chicago maybe and
Yeah.
Boston. Like I love
And she
her
created on
vlogs.
a mic.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm extroverted enough to do that.
Yeah, there's like a certain personality, and I think that's just also with YouTube. Like
Yeah.
there was like that certain personality that you can tell when there's like a YouTube, like they're just on.
They are.
And
Yeah.
but I think now it's kind of gotten to the point where people are like, you don't have to be this crazy, obnoxious personality. Like you can just be, because for a while I was like, well, if I'm like more monotoned or like low key, is that going to be like not as attention grabbing? Like, is that not going to do as well? But I feel like people relate to that still in a way that's, like I don't relate to that certain YouTube personalities either. So
Yeah. I'm not like a very like crazy, how do I think of like,
theatrical, like dramatic.
yeah, I'm definitely more low key. And when I vlogged, one of like some of the feedback that I would get was, "Oh, your vlogs are so peaceful."
Yeah,
like,
I love that.
Thank you. Like even
Yeah.
if I'm, doing something that seems a little, I don't know, I don't know. I don't really do crazy shit anyway.
Did you start
so-
vlogging in college?
I started my senior year of high school.
I love that. I
And-
wish I knew to
but
do
it was
that.
like I don't know, it was like such a weird, so I guess that was like 2016 or 2017, but it was still kind of weird to do that. And so like
Mhm.
people were kind of like judgy,
yeah.
and I had like someone played my videos at a party in high
Like
school.
in a mean way or like a
Oh yeah, in like a haha look at her.
were you there?
No. But I
That
saw
is-
Snapchats. Yeah.
But now look at you.
But these are the same people that are swiping up on my Instagram. So
Yeah,
they're like, that's
so
sick.
cool.
Like,
Yeah.
have a good trip. And I'm like, okay.
But that's the thing. If you're doing something that people think is weird and think is not normal, you're probably doing something that's right. You know what I mean? Because if it felt very, like if it was normal at the time, you probably weren't doing anything that was going to be groundbreaking. So it's like
True.
you have to be doing things that are a little bit out of the box. And some people might look at you and think that's strange and weird. But I think it's the hard part is canceling out that noise in those voices and being like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what their opinions are. I don't need validation from anyone else. That's like the challenge is
Yeah.
not caring.
Absolutely. Or like how you walked into Blue Bottle and you're like, okay, I'm going to take like a TikTok vlog. Like I'm scared to take pictures like in public, which I need to get over.
I still have phases, like moments where I'm like, okay, I'm like, this is not the time. And then there's other times where I'm like walking down the street. I'm like, I don't care.
Like, hey guys.
Yeah.
Also, people aren't looking. That's what I
Right.
need to
That's
get
what
over.
I've noticed. I'm like,
no one's looking.
and
no one cares.
even because I've done tripods in public before and it's like, it kills my soul. It's so cringe. One time I had to do it. I don't know how I had the courage to do this. I was doing like a sponsored brand deal with Bumble for an event. And I had to
That's awesome.
pre-promote the event. And so I went to the bar that it was going to be like happening at and I had to post it that day. Like I had to get this picture and I had no one else that would go with me. And so I brought my tripod to the bar and it was so embarrassing. Like I literally set it up and I just like
Was it during the day or was it during like bar hours?
No, it was like during the day. It was like a rooftop bar. So it was like
Okay.
but the thing was like no one even thought it was weird. Like a guy came up to me trying to get my number. I was like,
Wait, that's kinda
I'm
cool.
Like, I'm like, are you not seeing what I'm doing? This is so embarrassing.
Maybe
And,
he
like-
was like, go girl, like girl bossing.
Yeah, like I just don't think people care because it's like maybe they'll think about it for a second and then they go on with their day.
Yeah.
Like-
or they're like, oh, get it girl, like what's your
Get-
Instagram?
Yeah,
You know? That's
Yeah,
what I think if I see someone taking pictures in public. I'm like, go girl.
like yeah. I used to like cringe so hard when if I had to do like a brand deal or something and be like, this is so embarrassing. But now I'm like, no, get your bag. Like,
Literally. So are you a full-time content creator now?
okay, so I'm not a full-time content creator for myself, but my like full-time thing is social media strategy, content production, and I work with other people.
Okay.
So I work with other like influencers and I help them with strategy, editing, and content creation.
Love it.
And then I obviously do it for myself too, but I don't make my full amount of money through just myself.
So what's your favorite part about working with other influencers?
I think it just, for me, the people that I work with at this point, they have really cool opportunities that I'm able to go with on. And so it's put me in rooms and
Yeah.
given me opportunities I don't think I would have gotten on my own as like a smaller creator. And so I think that's like just been one of the coolest things. There's certain ones that I'm just like pinch me moments where I'm like, I cannot believe I'm here. Like, for example, I work with a celebrity stylist in LA and she's like the celebrity stylist out here. And she was doing a BCBG campaign and like younger me would have never believed. Like I used to wear BCBG to my like homecoming and prom and I'm like, I'm at their photo shoot and I'm like doing the BTS content for this and like all that stuff. And it was just like pinch me moments like that where I'm like, wow, I'm really doing all the things that I had like once manifested and dreamed of doing. And so I think that for me was probably like the coolest part of it.
Take me back to college, you.
Oh my God.
What
She was crazy.
what
let me tell you.
what were you what was your, I guess, trajectory? What were you studying?
Yeah.
What were you, dreaming about?
Okay, so I always knew since high school that I was interested in like PR and at the time social media wasn't a thing. So it was like PR and magazine, like print magazine, editorial type stuff. Like that was always just something that I like wanted to do. Like I remember being little and like me and my sisters and my cousins would make our own magazines. Like we would like always in that space. And so then once I went to college, I was a communications major, which is like the easiest major. But
I was too.
but it was like what
Yeah.
I knew. I was like, this is the major that I need to do to get in that path.
Yeah,
because I was
absolutely.
obsessed with, I don't know if you know who Kelly Catrone is, but she was like a PR lady in back in the day, the Hills era. I'm a little bit older. So. But anyway, so I just always like kind of like looked at what she was doing and whatever. So I did communications and I was just crazy in college. Like I was party girl. Like I did not have like, I was not someone who was like super focused on goals and like career and all that stuff. Like I had internships. I had really good like marketing internships, but I was also like way more in like I was wrapped up in the college lifestyle. And so then once I graduated, I like didn't really have anything lined up and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I ended up in healthcare tech. And like,
Really?
yeah, that was like
Okay.
the job that I was in after college. And I liked it. Like, it was a really great company. It was like a very much like startup vibe. And I really loved doing it, but it wasn't what I was like passionate about. Like, it wasn't what I had always dreamed of. But I was just like, it works. I'm
Mhm.
paid decent for like
Yeah.
out of college and everything's good. And then I had a very, very crazy accident. It's like a whole thing. We can get into it,
Do you want to get into it?
we can.
Okay.
I feel bad because I'm like, I've talked about it so much that people are probably like, shut the fuck up about your accident. But so basically, I walked to work every day at the job I had. And when I was walking to work, I was crossing the street and I got hit by a bus, like walking.
Holy shit.
And yeah, it was a very, very crazy experience. And so I basically went right into emergency surgery. And at that point, everything had changed for me. Like, I had spinal fractures, my pelvis was fractured. I had to do a spinal fusion. There was like moments where we didn't know like what my recovery was going to look like. And so I was in the hospital probably a month. And then when I eventually was able to leave the hospital, I was in a wheelchair. And so at that point, like, I was just in recovery. Like, I wasn't working at all, but I was so lucky. Like, this is why, like, the company I worked for, everything happens for a reason. But the healthcare company that I worked for, obviously because they're in healthcare, they were so supportive of everything and they really took care of me. I was on, I think it was short-term disability is what they call it. And so I was getting paid even though I wasn't working
Wow. Okay.
because I was like, I mean, I couldn't really work. I was on
Yeah.
so many like painkillers, medications, and I was just in physical therapy basically. But I did have a lot of downtime, and that's like when I got into listening to podcasts actually. And so I became like obsessed with the Skinny Confidential. That was like the first him and her podcast that I would like listen to. And I just like learned so much about social media and marketing through their podcast. And so I started like YouTubing and Googling and just learning as much as I could about social media. And I was like, I think I can do this. Like, I think that I can like do this for brands. And I was like, that's when I was like, I want to start doing social media marketing for brands and businesses. But I was like, well, I have nothing on my resume. So how am I going to show that? And so then I was like, I'll just do it for myself. I'll build up myself for a little bit and then I can pitch myself in that way and like show what I can do. So I learned as much as I could, did it for myself for a little bit, and then eventually started working with like some small local brands and businesses. Eventually, I went back to work to the healthcare tech company, but I was part time at first just because of the recovery, and then eventually went full time. And I just remember being like, I cannot sit at this desk and work a 9 to 5 job.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't just go through everything I went through to do something that like isn't my passion. And so I was like, how do I get out of this? Like, I need to get out of this. So then I just like leaned into the social media thing. But when I quit my job, I still wasn't making enough money social media wise to like really just do that full time. So I picked up a job. I was probably 24, 25 at the time. I had a college degree. I was working at an amazing company and I left it to go work as a host at a restaurant. And I remember people thought I was like crazy. They were like, you're going to go be a host at like this bar slash nightclub restaurant. And I was like, yeah.
Well, it gives you flexibility to do
Yes.
what you want to do.
And I was like, I
Yeah.
can work at night and make decent money.
Yeah.
And during the day, I can work on social media and like build this business and brand that I want to do. And so I just did that for a little bit. And then eventually I also in my head, I was like, the restaurant that was opening, I was like, they're going to need someone to do their marketing. They're going to need someone to help with social media.
Genius. So forward thinking.
So
Yeah.
2 weeks in, they were like, we need to find a marketing, like social media person. I was like, I can do it. And like, they're already seen my Instagram and stuff. So they're like, oh, she gets it. Like, she can do it. So I did it for them for a while. So that was like my first like job in social media. And then I just leveraged that to like my next job and my next job. And eventually it got me to LA. And I was, at the time, I had been working at FanJoy. They are like I don't know if you've heard of them. They do
Familiar,
merch
yeah.
for content creators and influencers and YouTubers, like all that. So I was in that space again. And I was just like, this is my dream job. I'm working social media. I'm working with content creators. I'm doing YouTube videos. I'm doing production. Like, I was doing everything I had dreamed of. And so that was like a big moment for me of like, you really like everything when I was younger that I wanted, like, was coming into fruition. And so it was a process and it was like long. It wasn't like easy. There was a lot of nights where I wasn't sleeping and I was, working multiple jobs and kind of was like making it work until it did. And then eventually I left and just did freelance social media consulting and strategy for like the few people I work with, and then just focusing on myself now. So here we are.
What a crazy,
I know that was so long. I'm
wild
sorry.
ride. No. We've got time.
I'm
Okay,
like, I always feel bad when I like talk so much.
No, you're good. That's what this is all about. I talk all the time, so like my listeners always hear my voice. So like I'm so happy that you're here. I want to backpedal a little bit to your accident.
Mm-hmm.
So you got hit by a bus.
Yeah, we kind of breezed over that.
Yeah, we kind of breezed over that one. If you're comfortable with it,
Yeah,
kind
I'm
of walk
so
me
comfortable.
through what those first couple, maybe like moments were like.
Yeah. So it's crazy because this is the other thing that I really think the universe works in a weird way, and I'm so spiritual now because of that. I was always a little bit before, but after that it was like next level. I was running late that morning to work too. I remember I was getting ready. Abercrombie's headquartered in Columbus. The boy that I had like the biggest crush on was going to this charity event that night at Abercrombie because that's where he worked at their headquarters. So I was going to that event, and I was like, I had laid out my outfit on my bed, like different options, so that like right after work I could come home and change, like all these things. So I was like a little bit late in the morning because I was like trying to get all these things ready. And then I remember when I started to walk to work, I was like, fuck, I'm going to be late for work. Like, and I texted my coworker. I was like, ugh, I missed the bus to get there because there was like a shuttle that took us from where I lived. And I was like, I'm going to have to walk and I'm going to be late. And so, like, the timing of me stepping into the street and the bus hitting me, like, all of those things had to align in some weird way for that timing to happen. Like, it was just crazy. And so I started walking across the street. I feel something hit me on my right side. The next thing I know is I'm just underneath the bus, and it's like literally dragging me underneath. And I was a little bit in shock. Like, I couldn't fully process what was happening. Like, I didn't really believe that I was like underneath a bus. Like, I was just like, this cannot be happening. But then I was also like, I'm gonna die. Like, it was kind of this it was, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's like this mix of like, can't be happening. I'm gonna die. Like, this is it. And so finally the bus stopped, and I was still in shock, so I didn't feel any pain at that point. You're just kind of like processing what the fuck just happened. And I remember being like, I don't have time for this. Like, I have to go to this event tonight. Like, how am I gonna get like I literally was like,
I don't have time for this.
I was like, am I gonna have to like go in a wheelchair or crutches? Like, how am I gonna get there? Like, I just like, I couldn't process the fact that like I'm not going to this event anymore, and like your life is gonna change. And so it was like that type of like shock. You're just in, and it's also, you're in fight or flight. So for me, I was just like, all right, what's going on in your body? Like, what can you feel? Can you feel like these parts of your body? Like, are you paralyzed? Like, just kind of like running through it. And then I started hearing people around the bus kind of talking to me because I was still underneath it, and just like letting me know help was coming and everything. And I just remember being like, is there blood? Like, do you guys see blood? Like, it was crazy that I was like able to have these like full conversations. Like, I remember like walking through someone to like unlock my phone and call my roommate.
Wow.
And it happened right outside of my apartment. Like, my balcony, like if my roommate had gone outside and like looked over the balcony, it would be like you would see it. And they had heard the ambulances, everything. They just didn't know it was me.
Oh.
And so like she left a message for my roommate, and then they took me to the hospital. The moment that they pulled me out from underneath the bus is when I started to feel the pain. That's when I was like, oh, this is real. Like, this isn't a joke. Like, this is your life right now. And so they flipped me over onto the stretcher, and I just felt like the worst pain I've ever gone through. And they put me into the ambulance, and they just start cutting your clothes off. And like, and it's crazy because like if you had told me this was happening, I would have been like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. But like in the moment, you don't even think anything of it. Like, I'm not even thinking about the fact I'm naked in the back of a bus or van or whatever it is with random people. Like, I'm just like, save me. Like, am I gonna die here? They just, take me to the hospital. I go right into testing. They do all their scans, everything, and basically just prep me for surgery. And so at this point, I think my roommate had came to the hospital. They didn't know exactly where I was. They had to call a few different hospitals to find out where I was. And then once they had called, the hospital wouldn't give them information about if I was alive, if I was okay, like anything. All they could say was that I was checked in there because they're not family. They can't like release that information, I guess. And so they had like no idea what to tell my parents either. And so finally my friend's mom had to come to the hospital, and she was the one who was like, her parents are coming from Chicago. They're not going to be here for like hours. We need to know something. Like, we have to tell them something. And so they're like, she's alive. Like she has to go into surgery. Like she's in really like bad condition. We can have 2 of you guys go back there and talk to her so she's like a familiar face before she goes into surgery. I didn't know this until like way later. Like my friends had told me like almost like 2 years ago they had told me this, and this had happened 6 years ago. And so they had told me that when they came to talk to me, like I was just like covered head or up to my neck, and my one friend, she was like, you looked squished.
Aw.
I know. She was like, you're little already, but you literally looked so squished. And so they were like, one friend had to walk out. She like couldn't, because they were like, you can't show motion. Like you have to,
Wow.
you just have to like talk to her like nothing's wrong and like calm her down. And my one friend said that I just kept looking at her, and I was like, am I gonna like die? And she's like, no. And then she was
Do
like,
you remember like talking
I don't
to them, or
remember
is
this
kind
part.
of
No,
okay.
yeah. I think I was just way too drugged up at this point.
Right.
But then I guess I looked at her and I was like, am I going to ever walk again? And she like couldn't answer me because they didn't know at that point with where my spinal fractures were in, because they were so close to my spinal cord. And until I had the fusion, they weren't really sure
Wow.
how the surgery was going to go. So I just like remember when I first went into surgery being like, this was also my first surgery I've ever had in my life. Like I had never been in that position before. And to have it like unplanned, like I didn't know who the doctors were. I don't know what the process, like procedures were. Like I had no idea what was going on. And I was just like signing off on things, being like, okay, do it. Like I had no idea what I was going to wake up to. And for me to wake up and not be paralyzed and like them saying like you'll walk again was the most like it's just such a crazy experience of going like I don't know what's going to happen when I wake up, and then being like it's going to be a journey but you'll be okay. And it's made me so just grateful for every single day that I have now. Like every little thing that I am able to do, I really am like wow, like I'm so lucky. Like I don't take it for granted at all. And I mean, it was the hardest thing that I've ever gone through, but it's completely changed the way that I act and my perspective and how I view the world. And I know this is probably a little bit of a trauma response, but to me, I'm like, I wouldn't change that experience because it's shaped who I am now. And like, I don't know who I would have been before that. But I think a lot of people who have like deep rooted trauma like that, we kind of all say that. Like, we're all like, we wouldn't change it. But it's like, um, there's times where I'm like, it would be nice if I didn't have PTSD or
Right.
chronic back pain, but you can't change it. So you have to kind of accept it and like learn to love that experience because now it's part of my story. And it's just, I got really lucky and I am so grateful for that. There were points where people were like, you're so optimistic, you're so positive. And I was like, I have like moments where things are dark, like where I don't even like I remember being in the hospital in so much pain being like, and I hate that I even have this thought, but there was times where I was like, I wish I was didn't make it because it was just so painful. And I was like, how am I going to live every day in this pain? Like when you don't see that light at the end of the tunnel,
Right.
you're just like, how am I going to get through this? But we're so adaptable. Humans really, you can adapt to any situation. Like I even think, because when I was in the wheelchair, and I had to like shower and just do like basic because I had to go to occupational therapy to kind of like relearn those skills, like getting in and out of the car, getting in and out of the
Wow.
shower, all those
So
little
how
things.
long were you in the wheelchair for?
September to December, I think.
Wow. Okay.
But the first 2 weeks, completely just horizontal in a hospital bed. And then the second 2 weeks in a rehab hospital.
Wow. Okay.
But I think it's hard to tell when I was like, I can love this experience. It's hard to say that I love that experience. But I think the first year is like kind of crazy just because of how much medication I was on that like there's parts of it I don't even really remember. I think once I was able to just kind of like accept that this is like my life and that like this experience is always going to live inside me and that it's something I'm always going to have to work on, I just kind of was like at the end of the day like you survived something that you shouldn't have survived. Like that's a gift in itself. Like someone was looking out for you that day, like whatever you believe in, like someone was like there with you and you survived for a reason. So now you have to go do everything that you want to do and live your life to be the fullest. And so I think like that just like perspective shift has made me like be able to like love and appreciate the hard shit that I went through, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was crazy.
Dad, that is an insane story.
Yeah.
And so you're fully recovered now.
Yeah, so all my
Okay.
like surgeries and everything, I had probably like the first 2 years was like my true like recovery, I would say like fully recovered, yes. Do I have like chronic back pain that I'm always gonna have to deal with? Yes. Are there certain things that have lasted me a little bit longer, like permanent damage that I'm always gonna kind of have to learn to work with? I mean, I walk and I do everything normally, like you would never know. Like I still can go hiking and go to workout classes, and I'm physically able to do everything that I had once done. um Mentally it's like a struggle. Like I've realized I'm always going to just have to work on my mental health now, and so it's kind of like a yes, I'm recovered, but like I feel like I'm always in recovery kind of.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know, like I think that maybe one day there'll be a time where I'm like at peace and everything, but for now I'm still like just trying to heal and like recover and understand and process, you know, that whole experience and what it means for me now. And I remember I talked with a therapist when it happened, when I was still in the rehab hospital, and he was like, and at the time it didn't hit me as hard as it does now, where he was like, you are going to always ask yourself, like, why me? And not necessarily like, why did this happen to me, but like, why did I live? And like, why did I survive? I'm going to get like choked up
Ooh,
from it.
I'm getting chills.
I know. And when he said that, I don't think I understood how like deep of a question that was, because now it's like, why me? And like, what is my purpose? And like, what am I living for? And like, why did I survive? And
Yeah.
so I don't know. It's just something that I think I'm always going to explore, and I haven't found that answer yet, but I'm hoping I get there.
I feel like it's one of those things that like I don't know. We'll just go really deep right now.
I
I hope
know.
that's okay.
I'm
But like
so sorry that
like
it's turned to
no,
this.
no, no, you're fine. Anytime I talk with friends, we go so deep all of a sudden, and it's like we're talking about like coffee, and then all of a sudden it's like, so what's the purpose of life?
Yeah.
Which is great. That's just like how I roll. But yeah, no, I feel like that's something that you'll always kind of wonder
Yeah.
until like, I don't forever.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you have like little tiny purposes in everyone else's life. Like you could be, in a coffee shop and you just have like a small conversation with the barista, but maybe like makes their day or changes their life in some capacity or something.
Right.
And like you'll never know until you just like continue to go through everyone else's lives. And like,
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, wow.
I know. It's
Holy
crazy.
shit.
Do you feel like I mean, you're a few years younger than me, but do you feel like you've found what your purpose is yet? Or like, how's that journey been for you?
I don't know.
Because I feel like that's kind of everyone's journey in life, is like, what's my purpose? Like, everyone gets to that point where they're like, what's the point?
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
For most people, at least, but I don't know.
No, I mean, I ask myself that all the time. And like, I think the podcast is one branch of that.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's like the end all be all. Do you know, her name's Madison. She's a soul cycle instructor. She came on the podcast. I don't know if you know who she is.
I don't do, I'm
Yeah.
not like a cycle girl, but I feel like I've heard.
She's in Boston.
Yeah.
And she's also got a podcast.
Okay.
We talked about this earlier, but like
When you see
a
the cover,
yeah,
you know who it
yeah,
is.
you're like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
got it. But she presents this idea of something called the knock. And
Mhm.
I think that's what she calls it, but it's basically when people in your life or strangers even point out things that you're good at, kind of like it's knocking on your door. And it's not called a knock. I don't know. I could be totally butchering this. She'll probably mess
No,
with
it
me and be
sounds
like,
good though.
yeah, it doesn't sound
I
good.
like the knock.
And it's basically when, you don't necessarily see what your purpose is, but the people
Mhm.
around you do. And it's really easy for people to identify that. Like, have you ever written a bio for yourself? It's the hardest thing
I'm
to do.
I can't even write you should see my podcast bio because it doesn't exist.
No, it's hard. It's
Yeah.
so hard because then it's like, well, what's my purpose like right now? But
Yeah.
a lot of times people around you can tell you better than you can tell yourself.
Yeah.
If that kind of makes sense. But I had a friend tell me, she's a nurse, and she eventually, hopefully, wants to go into be a midwife, or
Mhm.
I guess she has to be a nurse practitioner and then a midwife. But I always thought like being a doula would be cool.
Oh, yeah.
Like I don't know why, but like for some reason childbirth intrigues me.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's a beautiful thing. Like, it's
Yes.
literally creating a life.
I find it so like intriguing.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, well, you should be a doula. Like, I feel like you've got like good energy. But that's always like one little thing that was like in the back of my mind. But I never told her that. And so she was talking about being a midwife, and I was like, oh, that's so interesting. She goes, I feel like you'd be a good doula. And I was like, wait, but how'd you know that? Like, I like thought about that briefly,
That's
and then kind of like brushed it
crazy.
away. But I don't know. So maybe like when you're, just going throughout your daily life, and people like identify strengths in you that
Mhm.
maybe you don't see or maybe you've briefly thought of but never thought to tell yourself that you are those things.
Yeah.
I think that's really helpful.
I think it's also like because obviously you have the podcast and you're in the creator space too, but the fact that you want to do something that's also so different from that is cool because at times I feel like we're put in these boxes where like you can only do
Yeah.
one thing, and it's like a lot of us have like multiple passions and things that we're interested in, and I think it's okay to like explore all those different things. Like you might as well
Yeah.
give everything that you think about a try
Oh,
to just
absolutely.
see what happens at least.
Yeah. And I think too, like in the creator space, like a lot of people are just content creators or
Mhm.
they're just influencers. And I feel like I'd get bored,
I yeah.
like because do marketing and
I
social for,
couldn't do it if it was like and I think the mental health aspect of it being
oh my gosh.
everything being based on just you, that was like the reason I was like I loved having like a full-time job because that was still in the industry because I got to do the things I loved, but it wasn't all about me, and I didn't have this pressure of like I have to post every day, I have to show up every day for
And make my own life look so
yeah,
interesting for other
because
people's
now it's like
entertainment.
I can kind of post when I want to and create when I want to and not feel like I have to like sell and make money off of this off my platform, you know.
Yeah.
So that was like the part that I liked, having kind of the freedom to do multiple things.
So outside of creating and outside of marketing and doing all the things like in this space, what do you like to do?
Okay, so there's a few things that I'm like I love. Ice skating. I'm really big on adult hobbies. I think everyone should have an adult hobby because it just brings you so much joy that you like something that has no other purpose besides giving you joy and
Love
giving you
that.
like a feeling of accomplishment and just helps with your self-confidence. Like it also gives you something that you can talk about. Like I always say, like if you're going on a first date and you are and someone's like, "What do you like to do?" and you say like you have nothing to say. It's
Work.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, like work, going out,
Boring.
drinking,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and then it's like, oh, all of a sudden you're more interesting because you have these things that you like to do. And when I meet people who have like passions and interests and hobbies, I'm like so much more drawn to them. I think that's so cool. And so ice skating was like a big one for me. That was like a little bit more inner child healing work too, because I did it when I was younger and then I stopped for years. So I was like, I'm just going to pick it up again. So adult hobbies I think are huge. I love thrifting. I just love finding like especially like Goodwill and like finding something really cheap that's like a good find. Love that feeling. And then I am really into Pilates, and I don't know if you do Legree or Pilates at all.
A little bit.
Okay.
But tell me more because I want to get into it.
Okay, so I this is like probably a little bit of a hot take. There's Legree and there's Pilates. I never really knew the difference for a while. I was doing both, but I just kind of like they're two different machines. It's two very different methods. But I just kind of thought it was all Pilates because most people call both Pilates. And so I signed up to do my teacher training at a studio in LA that's name has Pilates in it. And I was like, I'm getting my Pilates teacher training, blah, blah, blah. And then I go and I'm like realizing like, wait, I think this is Legree. Like I start learning more about Legree and I'm like, this is definitely Legree style. And then I realized like it's actually really painful for my body. For someone with a spinal fusion, Legree I would not like if you have back pain, lower back issues. It's
Are
not
they both on a reformer?
yes, but they're different types of reformer. There's a
Okay.
mega reformer and then there's a like a true reformer. Pilates is much more like gentle. It's like about mind, breath, connection. Legree is a little bit more like hit style. It's a little bit more intense. It's almost like more boot camp.
Would solid core fall into
Yes,
that
that's Legree.
category? Okay.
And I used to love solid core, but I started to realize like my body kind of like hurts when I do these because you're
Yeah.
kind of more on your Pilates. You're more on your back. Legree, you're kind of like on your I don't know plank style.
Yeah.
And so it just was like putting a lot more pressure on me. And I was like, I don't think I like this. So I did the teacher training, which isn't super cheap. And then at the end of it, she was like, do you want to like continue doing it? I was like, no.
Like, I don't like this.
I was like, I learned I don't like this. So that was like one thing I was like, I wish I would have done a little bit more research and realized that I wanted to do Pilates teacher training and not Legree. So I think eventually maybe I'll go back and do like true Pilates teacher training.
Is it transferable or not really?
you, so there's also like mat Pilates.
Okay.
And so that style is all kind of like I could still teach like mat Pilates and it would basically be similar because I got my group fitness certification too in that process. But it would be like a totally different training just because it's a different machine, it's different movements, the style is very different. It just this is the thing. If I go to a workout class, I want to be like I don't want to be super stressed out. Like I want to
Oh,
just
100%.
like I want to leave it feeling refreshed and peaceful and whatever. And so Pilates is just, it does it for me. Legree was just very like, I would be like stressed out during the class, and like I just didn't like it. I didn't like, it's even like most of them are in a dark room. The lights are kind of weird. They're like louder music, yelling. Pilates is much more like that yoga, chill. So
Okay, so that makes so much sense. So I had a neck injury when I was in high school.
really, what
And
from?
so this is so embarrassing. I passed out in the shower.
That's scary.
Yeah. And
Oh
so
my god.
kind of similar to I mean, and I'm fine now, like full recovery.
Yeah.
Like I got really lucky. And long story short, I have gone to solid core a couple times, and it's just it hurts.
Yeah.
And I know it's not supposed to feel great. Like
Right.
you're supposed to
Like
kind
it's
of
a
get your ass
workout. It's
kicked,
gonna,
but like
yeah.
but okay, so it's starting to
Try,
make sense for
yeah,
me.
try like a true Pilates. And some places will be called Pilates and then you
Mhm.
go into Legree style. But if you can find like the reformer machine is like, it's just, it's also just cute, like more of my aesthetic. Like I was looking at these like Legree machines, I'm like, this is not cute.
Like, this is huge.
Yeah, I'm like, this is bulky. I want something like, you know, I don't know, neutral and cute.
Yeah.
And so I would try Pilates then,
Okay.
because Legree is painful to me, and I know other people who've had similar issues with it. Some people love it and it's great for them, but if you have like injuries and stuff, it can be a little straining.
But I agree with you. Like if you know your vibe, like if you like
Yeah.
being yelled at, if you like, go
Yeah.
do those things.
Right.
But yeah, if you want to just be chill, like
Yeah.
go to a workout. Because if you don't like it, you're not gonna go.
And I also kind of changed my view on working out, especially after my accident, because my body did change from it. Like it didn't look the same that it did before. And so I also, when I go to work out, like I'm not just thinking about the physical changes that are going to happen from the
Mm.
workout. Like I'm going to it more so for like the mental
Yeah.
aspect. And then like it's an added bonus that, my core is getting tighter, my butt might be getting bigger, whatever it is. Like those little things are like an added bonus. But if you look at your workouts as like, okay, I'm going to this to get a little bit of release and kind of like de-stress a little bit, you kind of just actually enjoy it more and do things that are just more mindful, and finding like mindful movement versus this like stressful, like intense workout. But some people like that, so it's kind of what you want to do.
Do you think that it helped your relationship with your body more? Kind of just stepping into this, like.
Yeah, it did
Okay.
in ways, but it also, because I don't think I ever had like a bad relationship with my body before. I was always like fine with it. There was things that I wanted to change, but it wasn't until like after, like I've gotten plastic surgery and I've done like all that stuff, and I'm here for the Botox fillers, all that stuff. I don't whatever care about that. I'm very like open about it. But before my accident, I don't think I ever really thought about plastic surgery, so that was kind of weird. And I think maybe it was because I had surgeries that I suddenly was like, I can handle any surgery. So like
Yeah.
I can just do whatever. And so like I had like a period where I was almost like comfortable getting surgeries, and so I was really open to trying things that I hadn't really thought about before. And then I was like, why am I doing all these things? And so I don't think it hurt my body image, but it definitely made me kind of view it differently in a way that was like, well, if there are things that I want to change about it, I'm going to, because life is so short and I might as well kind of change up my character, my avatar, however I want it to look and how I like view it in my head. Like, why not just go do it if I have the ability to? But then there was a part of it that and this is like kind of the struggle and the balance that I have to find is, okay, but you don't need to make these physical changes, because you should just be grateful for the abilities your body
Mhm.
has. And so, like, the fact that you can walk, like, don't hate on your legs or whatever body part it is, because think of the function that it can do for you and how it gets you through the day. So, if there are days where I'm like, oh, I don't like the way I look today, I just kind of like go back to that mindset of like, okay, but what are the functions and abilities that you have, and like be grateful for those. So that helps with like any body image issues. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of, it's something that's like always, at least for me, like I feel like I'll always kind of have to like accept my body how it is and like this new thing. But sometimes it's frustrating because aside from just like the physical appearance, like the pain part of it, it's like being in pain is like emotionally tolling. And so when I have back pain, I'm like, oh, I hate my back. Like, so it's sometimes you get hard on yourself about your body, but it's not necessarily about the looks. It's like the pain and like the function. And so when you don't have those functions, you have to just be grateful for the ones you do have.
Are there any little tiny micro habits that you, or maybe even like micro like therapies? I don't know if that's, did I just coin a term? I don't know. But even just like, I don't know, like journaling might be an example. Just little things that you do for yourself every day to kind of alleviate either physical or kind of that mental
Yeah.
pain.
This has been like the journey that I've been on like the last year is just what habits can I do to have a better mental headspace and also my physical pain that I go through. For me, it's like the morning setup and just getting myself started on a good foot really just sets the rest of my day up to look better. I am so lucky that I live on the beach and so that I'm able to go into the ocean. And so that has been huge for me, just like mentally, just being in nature. I know it's not accessible to everyone, especially if you live somewhere that it gets cold in the winter or whatever. I lived in the Midwest for years. It's only been the last 2 years that I've had the luxury of having nice weather all year long. But for me, just being able to get in nature, ground myself, I go in the sand, but if you're able to even just like go in grass, like something like that, I know it's so like, I don't know, it's maybe it feels cheesy or corny at times if it's like something new to you, but for me, it just feels so grounding and beautiful to be able to get into nature. So that's the big thing. Like if I can get into nature in the morning, love that. The morning sunlight. I know Andrew Huberman's like everyone's like obsessed with him and his morning sunlight, but if you can get um, direct sunlight first thing in the morning, I've felt like that's helped me with my sleep. I used to be someone who stayed up so late at night. Like I would stay up to like 2, 3, 4 sometimes, and like my sleep schedule was so out of whack. When I started doing the sun exposure, like the morning light, and sometimes evening's a little bit harder for me to get to, but it helped with my sleep schedule, like just getting on a better pattern. And I think sleep is just a huge one for your mental. So I would say those two. Obviously, like hydration, those are like my morning three things. And then I will try and do meditation's a little bit hard for me because I have a hard time sitting still, but I think the times when I can do it, oh my god, it's like I notice such a shift in my mindset. So just even doing a guided one like on YouTube or something, like finding one that's like 10 minutes long, having that. And then when it comes to physical pain, I used to be really good about this. I would go cupping. I don't know if you know what that
Okay,
is.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so just cupping, and it basically helps massage some of those like deeper muscles that I can't like really get to on my own. That was really beneficial because I try not to take any type of medications for like any of like my mental or physical stuff. I just have always been kind of like weird about medications. It works great for some people. For me, it just like was never, I just could never find like a good mix.
Yeah.
And I think I was also probably turned off from the fact that I was on so much at one point that
Mm-hmm.
I was like, went the opposite end. Um, I recently did acupuncture and I didn't realize like how emotional it was going to make me feel. I was like crying for like
Okay.
3 days straight after because it just, there's like stagnant energy in you that it helps let flow and just release. And so that was just like something that I think I want to incorporate more often.
Where'd you get it done on your body?
It's so funny. It's actually I did a trade. I helped her with social media, and because one of the celebrity stylists that I work for, her manager was like, "Do you think you would like help my cousin with like some
Oh,
social
no
stuff?"
way.
I was like, I don't really normally take like clients like that, but like who are not like trying to be on social as much because she's like very like small and low key. And I was like, but if she needs help with like some graphics and
Mm.
stuff, like I don't mind just helping her. Like I can do it. Like it's easy for me. And then she was like, "Well, I can like give you a session for free." And I was like, "Okay, like
That's
I'm fine with that."
awesome.
So we just did a little trade. She's in LA, but she's like referral based only. But I don't know how many locations they have, but I think Tia, have you heard of Tia?
Mm-mm.
They're like a women's clinic, I think.
Okay.
And so they have like all the services with like gynecologists and all that
Okay.
stuff, but
Yeah.
I think they offer cupping and acupuncture, and I think it's reasonably priced. Like I want to say the cupping was
Okay.
$30.
And I know some people like they have it on their insurance now. Like it's
Yeah,
being like more like
insurance.
widely accepted.
If you're on ClassPass, I would look on ClassPass
Okay. Yeah.
because that's the thing. Like people talk about all these habits and tricks to do, but a lot of it is really expensive.
Yeah.
Like it isn't accessible to everyone. Not everyone can afford to do all these wellness things.
Yeah.
So that's why I say like the things that are like getting sunlight, going in nature, drinking water, meditation, those are all free. Like you can do
Mm-hmm.
those in your room or outside your house, whatever. So I think finding things that are affordable if you can't afford some of the more like luxury wellness things. And then for me, I don't really spend a lot of money on designer stuff or like I don't care about that stuff as much.
I'm the
I would
same way.
like I don't
Yeah.
it's just never been like my thing. I would rather spend that on wellness and those treatments. So that's like kind of where I splurge a little bit when I want to like treat myself. And in my head, I'm like, if it's going to be beneficial for my mental health, it's worth it to me. And I think I sometimes will look at like, okay, how much do I spend if I was to go out on a night, like Ubers, drinks? If I use that same amount of money towards something that's actually beneficial for me, I can kind of like rationalize it a little bit better.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and a night out's really expensive.
So expensive.
Like-
I get you can get free drinks as a girl, but it's to the point where I'm like, it's not even worth it to me for
No.
like a crusty ass man to
Well, and
give me a drink and I have to talk to him and like, I'm like, I'll just pay the $20. Like,
No, literally, yeah. Or like the next day, you know, you have this fun night and you literally drop like $100, and then the next day you wake up and you feel like shit.
the
That's
anxiety.
That's
Yeah.
the worst. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up with a little
Okay.
bit of a rapid fire
Oh my God.
hot seat Q&A.
Okay. I'm not good with rapid fire because I feel like I talk a lot, but I'm going to try and be
Okay, well,
quick.
that's okay. So you can, you know, I mean, there are no rules, so you can do whatever.
Okay.
All right, first question. What is the last book you read and would you recommend it?
I'm still reading it. It's called The Body Keeps Score.
Love that book.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
I'm not fully done with it. So far I would say I would recommend it. It's a little bit more sciencey, I think, than
Yeah.
I was expecting, but I would recommend it if you have trauma.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree, though. It is sciencey.
Yeah.
You have to take breaks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What is one non-negotiable part of your morning routine?
I would say hydration. Like I just have to get water in as soon as I like wake up, I think.
What's one wellness trend that you can't get behind?
I don't know if this would count, but the clean girl aesthetic, it just doesn't work
Oh,
for
yeah.
me. It doesn't work for me. Like those TikToks you would see that were like such clean girl aesthetic. I'm like, it just will never be me. Like
Unachievable.
I'm just, yeah. So I don't know if that is considered a wellness trend, but like
counts.
that, you know, super like pretty morning routine. Like, no, mine's messy. And
I love
so I think whatever you can do to get things done, whatever it looks like for you. So for me, I can't do the super clean girl aesthetic.
Love
Even just like my hair. Like I can't do the slick back bun. Like just can't do it.
What song is on repeat right now?
Cinnamon Girl by Lana Del Rey. Anything Lana is like on repeat right now for me, but that one specifically, I just like really sing in the car.
Love it. Who's your celebrity crush?
At the moment, I would say Jeremy Allen White. I don't know if you know who that is. He plays in The Bear, but I loved him in Shameless. He was Lip Gallagher. I have the biggest crush on him as Lip Gallagher. So I would say I have a crush on Lip Gallagher as my celebrity crush, but it's Jeremy Allen White.
Love it. Okay, and then final question is the average age of my listeners, like 22 to 24. So if you could go back and tell your 22-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't drink so much. Stop blacking out. And don't sleep with him. Like, do not have sex with him. You don't need to have sex with him.
Love
Like, think about it before you do it.
Thank you so much, Neeloo, for coming on the show today. It was so great to have you.
Thank you for having me. I loved
Absolutely.
it.
Go ahead and plug yourself, plug your socials. Where can the listeners find you?
Okay, so my Instagram is at Neeloo Fathi, NeeLooFathi. My podcast is Order and Chaos. And then my TikTok is, it's my name like split up, but it's at Looney _ LOONEE _.
Awesome. And I'll have all of those linked in the show notes for you guys, too.
Yay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Such a good
fun.
episode. Thank you.
Wait, you're the best.